On that day, Congress passed legislation to fund 2.5 wars, hand what's left of our privacy over to the CIA and the NSA, and give the U.S. president the power to shut down whatever part of the internet he disagrees with. The U.S. and its allies have already sent over $300 billion to Ukraine, and the country is still losing its war with Russia.
What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to watch that full warning from Ron Paul, one of the most epic politicians we've ever had in America. I'm going to react to it, and then we're going to talk about the recent bill that Biden has signed, which is going to ban TikTok, or at least force TikTok to sell into the hands of a group of people that you're not allowed to talk to or talk about in America, because of course the only way to prove that they have no power is to pass hate speech laws for only one group to say that they have no power and constantly mock, shame, and harass anybody who talks about it. But anyway, we'll get to that later because we don't want to say the truth, aka hate speech, too early in this live stream, but we'll get to it later. And I do want to watch the full Ron Paul video. It's over 2 minutes long. I'm going to listen to it with you guys, react. Then we're going to get into how even journalists are being arrested in Texas by Governor Abbott. A Fox News videographer is getting arrested for, I watched the video, didn't look like he was doing much, but that's what happens when both parties are fake. There's a false paradigm, and they're able to trick Republicans into passing hate speech laws and anti-protest, anti-American laws against the First Amendment. It's going to be a good show. God bless you guys. A lot to talk about. Dreamer podcast starts now. Give me a thumbs up in the chat to let me know the audio is good, and give me a thumbs up in the video to give me an algorithm boost. Appreciate you.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
Looks good, folks. I'm going to try to answer some questions and chats at the end, but let's get right into it now without further ado. Let's listen to one of my favorite politicians of all time, somebody that unfortunately people didn't want to listen to at the time, but he's become more and more popular over the years because everything that he tried to warn Americans and especially conservatives of when he ran for president and for decades in Congress, it's all coming true, and everybody's a little more tolerant to understanding him now because they thought back in the day he was just weak and foolish, but now they've realized that their own party is actually working against their best interests. Here's Ron Paul with a warning to America for the current situation. God bless this guy.
When future historians go searching for the final nail in the U.S. coffin, they may well settle on the date April 20th, 2024. On that day, Congress passed legislation to fund 2.5 wars, hand what's left of our privacy over to the CIA and the NSA, and give the U.S. president the power to shut down whatever part of the internet he disagrees with. The U.S. and its allies have already sent over $300 billion to Ukraine, and the country is still losing its war with Russia. Nobody believes another $60 billion will pull a victory from the jaws of defeat. But this additional money is meant to keep up appearances until November at the expense of Americans who are forced to pay for it and Ukrainians who are forced to die for it. Speaker Johnson could not have passed these monstrosities without the full support of House Democrats, and as the majority of Republicans voted against more money for Ukraine. So in the worst example of bipartisanship, Johnson reached across the aisle, stiffed the Republican majority that elected him Speaker, and pushed through a massive gift to the warfare corporate welfare state. After the House voted to send another $60 billion to notoriously corrupt Ukraine, members waved Ukrainian flags on the House floor and chanted, "Ukraine, Ukraine." While I find it's distasteful and disgusting, in some ways it seemed fitting. Not to be outdone, the U.S. Senate on that same day passed the extension of Section 702 of the FISA Act, which not only allowed the government to continue spying on us without a warrant, but also contained new language massively expanding how they can spy on us. Many conservative voters are asking, what's the point of Republican control of the House is if the agenda is determined by Democrats? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is reported to have bragged to his colleagues about how easily Speaker Johnson gave Democrats everything they wanted and asked for nothing in return.
Thank you, Dr. Ron Paul. We appreciate you. And to look at the history of appreciation for Ron Paul, who was speaking the truth, probably the most truth that I've ever seen spoken in U.S. history. Let's go back in history and look at what Ben Shapiro was saying about Ron Paul back when he was running for president, falsely accusing him of anti-Semitism, because that's what Ben always does and continues to do to this day. Here's a few tweets. He said, Ron Paul is manifestly insane. As in previous debates, he is now gripping the pen as he would the neck of a Jew. So I guess Ben Shapiro saw Ron Paul just harmlessly holding a pencil, and he thought that he was gripping it as if he would the neck of Ben's people, because of course Ben constantly lies and exaggerates and makes stuff up, which is why you should find it a little bit suspicious that Ben's race and Ben's religion seems to be the only race and only religion in America that has hate speech laws being passed against the American First Amendment, to say that it's hate speech or anti-Semitism to say that Ben is exaggerating about certain topics, because that just proves that it's not happening, the fact that you need speech laws to have it. Speaking of which, I want to talk about this tweet by Matt Walsh, because he's talking about, well, actually, before we get into this, let's talk about some of the stuff he said with surveillance. So back during the Iraq war days and 9/11, they told us that surveillance was for the bad guys. After the lockdown of 2020, I think it's pretty obvious that you shouldn't want to give the government that power. Look what they did during lockdown. They took all of this energy and all these crazy stuff that they used to do to other countries, and they started doing it to Americans. They started shutting down protests. They started saying that your freedom is illegitimate, that gyms are dangerous, that surfing by yourself in the ocean is going to spread COVID. And then they used all of their police state power against American citizens to try to say that literally your literal freedom, not like metaphorically, like literally you walking on a beach was hazardous to everyone else's health. This is the same government. Nothing has changed. It's been bipartisan. In fact, it's only gotten worse and more blatant. The Republican Party, I've explained for a while, it's becoming more popular and everyone's starting to get it. So I'm grateful. But they're not just kind of like crappy opposition that's sort of helping you. They're completely fake. They infringe on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. They want to spy on you just as bad as Chuck Schumer. They could care less. They print just as much money. They convince you it's the left. The left convinces you it's the right. And then you fight with each other. And as you're fighting with each other, Governor Abbott, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Governor Kemp, Governor Youngkin, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and the whole rest of them have passed anti-First Amendment speech laws for Israel and one race and one religion that you're not even allowed to say the name of anymore, because just simply saying the name could be considered hate speech. So we'll just call it the group that must not be named, that totally doesn't exist and definitely doesn't have any power whatsoever as a collective, because even suggesting that they do is a hate speech violation in multiple states. What you're seeing on these college universities, I've been talking about it a lot, but now it's starting to ramp up. They're bringing in the police, the state troopers, the National Guard. I believe I just saw a Fox reporter who got basically tackled by, I think, a state trooper and arrested. And they're like, look what he did. And I saw my buddy Jorge Ventura, who's a very ethical reporter down at the border. And he's like, the guy didn't, like, he literally was just standing there and you just like attacked him. But that's, if you can convince Republicans that Ilhan Omar sucks, and I do think she sucks, by the way, but it's like, look at Ilhan Omar, Republicans, and people are just drooling like Ilhan Omar sucks, and then they're like, okay, so now we're going to start tackling journalists and like bombing churches, and people are like, yeah, to beat Ilhan Omar. You're not beating Ilhan Omar. It's another false paradigm of them just pointing to one senator who talks about Israel in order to justify anti-protest laws and anti-boycott laws and anti-divestment and sanction laws and anti-speech laws. And that's what's happening. People in the comments that are either very fake, part of me believes that they know what they're doing. The other part of me thinks that they're really dumb because they listen to 99% of conservative media, which is understandable because almost everyone's lying about this. They're like, are you suggesting or are you justifying blank, 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 blank? And they insert the craziest, most extreme things that have happened one time or aren't happening 99.9% of the time. And they say, so you are agreeing with that, right? And it's like, of course not, but read the laws, read what they're passing. It doesn't say what you think it says, and they're not doing what you think they're doing. They're not doing it for that reason. They're doing it because they've made protest and speech illegal for a foreign country. Just want to read something real quick because I pretty much just summed it up. I don't have the tweet to bring up, but I'll just read it because I listed it out because this is what's happening in America. Number one, we give money to a foreign country. Number two, we pass speech laws for that foreign country. Number three, we pass anti-protest laws for that foreign country. Number four, we say it's hate speech to say that that foreign country controls your country. Number five, we bring in the troops to shut down protests for that foreign country. Welcome to America, the country that passes hate speech laws for a foreign country, and then you're not even allowed to say that country has power over your country because that's just a total sign that it doesn't. Right, folks? And it's the Republicans that are just as in on it with Democrats. And people will say, oh, look at Ilhan Omar, look at those students. The Democratic Party and the Republican Uniparty, it's the same thing as these bills. They act like they're fighting, but they all come together and pass these hate speech laws because it's basically, you can't critique certain things or you can't talk about certain things. Anyway, one mainstream voice that's actually telling the truth about this, and God bless him, because everybody knows that the media company he works for telling the truth about this topic might get you smeared as an anti-Semite, like Ben Shapiro has done to Ron Paul and pretty much everybody that tells the truth about anything. But anyway, Matt Walsh does notice that they're lying about this, and I appreciate that he's telling the truth about this because Matt is influential. He has a large audience, and he definitely has a big audience in the world of people who have no idea that this is happening. If I say it, they say Anomaly's crazy. He just hates Donald Trump. He's a secret liberal. When Matt Walsh says it, they go, oh, wait, I know Matt Walsh isn't afraid. I know Matt Walsh is not a liberal. He's like one of the most conservatives there are. If he's saying it, maybe I'll listen. Let's see what he's saying. He responded to Governor Abbott and he said, if you're arresting them for an illegal encampment or for making threats, then just say that. But arresting people for anti-Semitism is obviously a clear violation of the First Amendment. I can't stand these protesters, but you can't arrest people for simply having hateful views. In America, you absolutely cannot arrest people for having hateful views. But in the United States of insert hate speech here, I'm just kidding, in America, they actually have, in many ways, passed hate speech laws. I've read them aloud. If you want to know the entire list of hate speech phrases, don't listen to the stupid commenter on Facebook who says, oh, you just disagree with crazy protests. No, Google defining anti-Semitism State Department, and the statedepartment.gov has the exact hate speech phrases. They call it a definition of anti-Semitism. It's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. So, of course, if now you question the definition of anti-Semitism, they might say that you're, criticizing an event or whatever. Who knows what they'll say? That's constant lies, constant deflection, including politicians. But in general, it's the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. What is the definition of anti-Semitism that they're passing in a law? It's a list of hate speech phrases, and also not just phrases. Hate speech, it's like 1, 2, 3, this is hateful, this is hateful, this is hateful, but it's not very direct. It's like, making mendacious or dehumanizing claims, saying Jewish people own institutions, but not limited to. So it's like this, but also this, but also this, but also this, but also this. But we're not saying it's just that. It could be more. If you say this, it's that. I mean, this is definitely hate speech, but if you go a little further, then it's hate. It's list of hate speech phrases to one day, I believe, criminalize speech. But right now, what they've successfully done is they have anti-BDS laws, which means you can't boycott, divest, or sanction. And they've gone even so far in certain states like Governor Abbott, where if you bring up his old tweets a couple weeks ago, he told colleges to create safe spaces and revisit free speech policies, because now free speech policies, aka the First Amendment, need to be revisited to now include and plug in the anti-Semitism hate speech laws that Governor Abbott has passed into legislation. So if they're protesting anything doing the exact same thing, there's no police or National Guard are going to be there because, of course, Republicans, Democrats, universities, they don't care. There's been crazier things said, crazier things done. But Israel, the country that we just gave $20 to $30 billion to, now you've crossed the line, because in America, you can criticize America. In America, you can criticize Christianity. But in America, if you even dare speak the truth about a foreign country that we're giving money to, now, you've crossed the line, students. It's time to strong arm you with police, state troopers, and probably National Guard if it hasn't happened already. I haven't been scrutinizing exactly. I saw one person, the state trooper. I saw politicians say they want to bring in the National Guard. I don't know if they have or not. The police officers, it's like, for sitting there. And I'm not saying every student's doing that, but they're just like tackling people, like just sitting there. It's like, wow, that really shows. But anyway, I want to play this real quick. This is Governor Abbott. He said this a few years ago. He said there's no room for anti-Semitic platforms in Texas. And he passed some sort of bill to ban what he calls an anti-Semitic platform, which is a Christian conservative owned free speech platform called Gab, where the leader is very outspoken, very bold, very opinionated. But he said, I'm going to run my business based on the First Amendment. If the First Amendment allows it, I'll allow it. It's that simple. And this is what Governor Abbott did to that social media company.
Anti-Semitic platforms like Gab have no place in Texas and certainly do not represent Texas values. What does represent Texas values is legislation like this by Representative King and Representative Goldman that fights anti-Semitism in Texas.
If you think they're forcing TikTok to sell because of China, you're stupid or naive or misinformed and very smart, but just tricked. It's obvious why they're making TikTok sell TikTok, because there's too many kids protesting pro-Palestine. And God forbid, can I say this? I don't know. Can we check the censors? Can we check the law? Or is America now Canada or Australia or Europe where you don't have free speech? I'm not sure, but I'm not a slave, so I'm going to say it. God forbid a social media company is not owned by someone who's a Zionist. They're going to have to sell almost definitely to someone who is a Zionist, who will prioritize limiting criticism of Israel or any of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that they're passing into law. And there's already videos circulating weeks ago that Steve Mnuchin, the money guy, I think he was Trump's head of the Treasury or the Federal Reserve. I don't remember what, maybe not the head of the Federal Reserve, but the head of, is it the Treasury? Was that what Steve Mnuchin did? I'll look it up because I don't want to be wrong. But there's a video of him on some television company saying, I've already put together a list of investors to buy TikTok when they're forced to sell it. Lucky him. Let's see. Steve Mnuchin, United States Secretary to the Treasury, right? So as soon as they're done with TikTok, they're going to move to X. X is a place where Ben Shapiro's not popular anymore. X is a place where everybody knows what they're doing. X is a place where people are making edgy jokes and saying, like, calling out all the frauds. And, now, of course, after they're done with TikTok, because it's owned by China, they're going to use the same justification they use to go after X and Rumble, if they haven't already. Rumble's owned by a guy who lives in Canada, so if you say, oh, it's a foreign-owned business, okay, Rumble is foreign-owned. Technically, I don't think they run it out of the United States of America, which is crazy, because Canada, I just saw that they're raising their top rate of capital gains, which is when you actually make money from stocks or investments. They're raising it to 66.6. Mark of the beast. 66.6 is now how much they're taxing capital gains. It's insane. I saw reports that Biden wants to raise it to 40 something. I know I said I'll never vote for Trump if he doesn't talk about these speech laws and stop passing them, but I don't know. If Biden's going to try to raise capital gains taxes to 45%, I might have to vote for Trump and then just talk shit the whole time and try to get people to realize that he's sneaky and dishonest too. I don't know. I don't think I will, but at the same time, 45 is diabolical. It's like just straight robbery. Like if you're in the highest bracket and you're just crushing capital gains, they're going to take 66.6%, and give it to Justin Trudeau. Like he's going to know what to do with it. He's going to fix poverty. BS. Ridiculous. Craziness. Anyway, when it comes to the TikTok ban, the truth is it's criticism of Zionism. The fake talking point that has brainwashed a lot of Republicans for decades is that, and Mike Pompeo says it, they're passing it into law in like roundabout ways, is they say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which is essentially, if you're critical of Israel past the threshold that they want you to be in any way, or observant, or just straight up accurate, or whatever you want to say, then that means you hate all the people that live in Israel and you hate everybody. It's ridiculous. It would be like saying, I mean, Ukraine is the easiest example right now. I'm not a big fan of Ukraine. I have Ukrainian friends. I don't hold it against the people of Ukraine. Not a big fan of Ukraine right now. Does it mean I hate all Ukrainians? Absolutely not. But what if they said, well, Ukraine is the only place in the world, it's the homeland of the Ukrainians. Okay, and Iran is the homeland of Iranians. I don't say you hate all Iranians if you don't like the government of Iran. I don't really like what America's government's doing right now. I don't hate Americans. So that's that goofy fake argument to say that if you have problems with what Israel's doing, or even simply, because to be honest, this might make some people upset, but I can't say that my issues are with what Israel's doing in the sense of like, I'm not trying to police the world and tell Iran and Israel what to do, just to be fair. My issue is as an American taxpayer, aka tax slave. My issue is that we're giving all this money to foreign countries, and then our politicians are passing hate speech laws in America against the Constitution. That's my real problem. It's not really with how they operate themselves. Of course, I might have an opinion on it, just like I have an opinion on the Syrian war. But I'm an American citizen, and I'm tired of being told I'm anti-Semitic because I don't want Republicans and Democrats to pass speech laws against the Constitution. In America, why would one country, one race, and one religion have hate speech laws? And Matt Walsh nailed it. He did a whole video on it. I've covered it multiple times. But Matt Walsh is the only mainstream conservative of that level, especially at Daily Wire. Everybody's probably afraid of getting Candace Owens over there. But in general, he's the only one fully explaining it, because everyone's like, oh, it's because the protesters are bad. Don't you think that protest going too far already has legality? If this is the United States of America, then if a threat to somebody is too far, then a threat to anybody of any race or any religion is too far, right? I agree that that's too far, but why would that only be too far for Israel and that only be too far for Jewish students? Why wouldn't that be too far for Christian students and kids of this ethnicity and this religion? In America, the law is supposed to be the law. This might be controversial, maybe not among my audience, but someone that's unlucky enough to stumble across my video that's never seen it. I believe that a crime is a crime. And when you say that it's a hate crime, you're basically just trying to say crimes against certain people are more important or less important than others. A crime is a crime. If a black person does something to a Jewish woman, or a Mexican does something to an Asian, or an Asian does something to a Hispanic, or a white person does something to a black person, to me, a crime is a crime. If it's a violent crime, it's a violent crime. If it's theft, it's theft. I don't think that it makes it better or worse based on who you are. Oh, call me that's so hateful nowadays, even though I'm the least hateful, least quote unquote racist person. I just want a fair country that makes sense for everybody. But that's a problem nowadays, isn't it? Where it's like, really what a hate crime is, it means you can burn the American flag and nobody will arrest you. But then if you burn an LGBTQ flag, you'll go to prison, which means what's the official blasphemy law in America? It's not Jesus Christ. Republicans are selling out the Constitution to allow you to, or not allow you to talk about biblical passages. They're literally selling Christians out, and Christians love them. That's why so many kids are so tired of you. But anyway, what is like, if the flag is burnable, but an LGBTQ flag gets you in more trouble, then that's our official flag. We're the United States of homosexuality. We're the United States of rainbow. It's like, that's the blasphemy law. It's not burning the flag or questioning Jesus. It's burning the gay flag, So that's what a hate crime really is. It puts lopsided crimes for certain groups, and other groups, it's nothing. Like, a crime is a crime. Good is good, bad is bad, regardless of who does it to who. That's what I believe. And that's the only way a country like America works. And the First Amendment kind of covers that. It talks about freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of protest. That's what it is. So Matt Walsh is the only one being honest about this. Most other Republicans are frauds. If you're going to pass a law that says this is too far, then this has to be too far for every race and every religion. But here's the thing. Protests gone too far are already illegal. Texas already has laws on book for protests that go too far. That's not what they're passing through legislation. So all I ask is to all these people in the comment section, all these stupid podcasters that lie about it, tell the people what they're really passing. They're passing the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, created in Budapest, according to the website, in 2014 or 2015. This new definition that creates 11 phrases where it's like this. If you say that Ben Shapiro has more loyalty to Israel than America, that's anti-Semitism. Like that's literally anti-Semitism. You're not allowed to say any person of Ben's ethnicity in America has loyalty to Israel. Not a single one. Imagine if Ron DeSantis flew to China. I've said this before, but it's so obvious. Imagine if Ron DeSantis flew to China and passed a Chinese hate speech law that said that limits your criticism of China and how much you can criticize China, and said that you're not allowed to say a single Chinese person in America has loyalty to China. Everybody in the Republican Party would be like, what the hell? He sold out to China. What the hell? He's trying to cover for people. That's what they're doing. And no one seems to notice or care, but no one notices. Well, there's multiple reasons. I think one, Republican media has blacklisted and smeared anybody who's talked about it for the last 5 years, the same way Ben Shapiro tried to smear Ron Paul in 2012 for saying we should cut foreign aid, because cutting foreign aid is anti-Semitism to Ben Shapiro because he wants a certain country to take your money. But then he doesn't want you to even be able to say it's happening. He'll say it's hate speech. He's a fraud. He's a total fraud. Any Republican listening to that guy, it's embarrassing. But anyway, okay, so here we are in the United States of America, and they can do this, they can do that. I've talked about the college thing, so I don't want to get into it that much, but it's like people that are like, oh, the billionaires, they're finally coming around. They're not coming around. It's a left-wing proxy war. The kids, a lot of them are socialists, a lot of them are communists, a lot of them are Bolsheviks, a lot of them are far left, too far left. And a lot of the people that were cool with that are Zionists, and they're like, whatever, yeah, I'll donate to your, that's fine, do all that. But the second that they cross the threshold of not being pro-Zionism, then now all of a sudden everybody has a problem. It's not because they care how far left they are. And when it comes to these college universities, I mean, this just shows you how in the bag people like Governor Abbott are. If you're right-wing and you disagree with the protests or you disagree with the universities, let's see what happens. I mean, you got left-wing teachers crying about left-wing students. They've always been ridiculous. They're wearing pharmaceutical masks. The teachers crying hate speech. The kids are crying in the streets. Let's see what this universities do about it. Like, Governor Abbott is so desperate to get them back to class so they could brainwash them and transgender half the university. I'm not saying literally half, but it's like, oh yeah, we gotta make sure all these universities. I don't even know I know Columbia's in I think New York, but anyway, he's at some university in Texas right now, like bringing in police officers because it's so important. It's like, what, now the universities you're a huge fan of, let them work themselves out. Like, as long as they're just sitting there, and then if something goes too far, then you could address it. But like, to come through with the police and now you're really bailing out the universities who probably didn't know what they were doing. It's like, let them figure it out. There's been crazy. I mean, the border is the obvious one. I hate to be repetitive, but like, there's millions of people flooding across the border, but they don't seem to be able to do anything about that. But the dynamic of it is just so obvious. I want to read a few comments. Anybody who disagrees with me, anybody has something to say, I'm going to keep this under an hour, but I want to show you this real quick too, because I think it's an interesting part of the narrative. Now, Alex Jones is he's very pro-Israel. Like, I've seen a lot of his stuff. He said like Muslims own the banks or the Federal Reserve. Like, I've seen him say ridiculous stuff. But anyway, it's like Alex is not overly critical of Israel. People criticize Alex Jones because they say he's not telling the truth about it. He acts stupid on the topic. I'm just trying to paint the picture. for people who don't listen to Alex Jones or don't see what he says, he's been more pro-Israel than he's been critical. He's defended them. He's defended Netanyahu. Like, in no way, shape, or form is Alex somebody that constantly like bashes them. He doesn't. He defends them much more than he ever says anything. I saw him tweet something today, and there's a reason I'm bringing it up. And I haven't seen anybody else talk about it as far as in like mainstream conservatism or somebody with Alex's audience. He said, I don't agree with what Hamas is doing. They're calling for genocide. But he goes, basically he said that Netanyahu of Israel, he said he declared Gaza in one of his speeches as Amalek, right? Which is, I believe, an Old Testament term, a biblical term, but he declared them Amalek. And Alex said, you shouldn't do that because that, according to Alex, he says that means that they want to eliminate or genocide Gaza. That's what Alex is saying. I'm pro-Israel, but don't call them Amalek because that means that you want to wipe them out. That's what Alex says. And that's what a lot of people think. I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but you could put in the research if you want to find out about what certain people think about Amalek. So this is for Alex or anyone, if they're declaring Gaza Amalek in order to justify certain means or certain ends, what else? Is it just that? Is it like, we just want to do that to Gaza and that's it? That's Amalek? Well, not according to my research. And this is in Jerusalem Post. In an article I read, it said, indeed, many rabbis identified Amalek with a specific people, such as the Christians and the Armenians. So according to some, Christians are Amalek and Armenians are Amalek. Why is that relevant besides, obviously? Because if you look at Armenia, I've said it recently, it's mainstream news. If you Google what I'm saying, you can find it in Associated Press all over the news. Left wing, right wing, everyone's reporting it because it's the reality. Israel is funding Azerbaijan, who's going after Armenians. Armenians believe they're being genocided. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem Post, they're saying that some rabbis consider Armenians Amalek and Christians Amalek. What does that mean? I don't know, but Alex is so concerned that they're saying that about Gaza. What if they were saying that about Christians and Armenians? So for me, I'm an American citizen. I don't want to lose my First Amendment right to protest or speak freely. They're going to always gaslight you. It's the same thing they do when they infringe on the Second Amendment, or they need to do this because of a virus, and now there's a pharmaceutical lockdown. You never just do tyranny. Like, everyone knows this, okay? Every country knows this. Every leader knows this. Most Republicans know this at this point, to be fair. Almost every Trump supporter knows this. Somehow the left doesn't know this, but they're probably going to find out with these protests. It's pretty obvious. I mean, everyone should know this. It's insane that people even use the word conspiracy theory to shut this down. If you want to take away somebody's surveillance, do you just say, hey, Americans, I want to spy on everybody for bad reasons. I want to, infringe on the Fourth Amendment. No, you say, I want to do it because of terrorism, or I want to do it because of this. Okay. If you want to infringe on the Second Amendment, do you say, I'm going to do it because, everybody owning the Second Amendment is hard for tyranny because we'd rather you not? No, they're going to wait until emotions are high and then they're going to infringe on it. And the funniest part is both parties are so fake, they play off each other like a ping pong ball. Obama wanted to take your guns, but he didn't. Trump infringed on the Second Amendment more than Obama did. Obama's words said he wanted to, but he never could, because when Democrats are in, Republicans sometimes are actual opposition. Other times they do nothing, like now. When Trump was in, he said he's pro-Second Amendment, but he infringed on it as soon as there was a massive shooting. And then he said he was like bragging about doing bipartisan work with Dianne Feinstein. That's who Trump is. But in general, this is what they do with everything. So is it really that hard for people to fathom that they would use someone like Ilhan Omar or Palestine in order to justify other speech laws and speech regulation? And this goes back decades and decades and decades anyway. Of course, it's escalated recently, but there's a reason they passed these hate speech laws in 2018 and 2019. It's like they don't want people to criticize certain things. But here's my issue is like, listen, I don't like look around and blame people, but if Italians owned a lot of things and then they pass anti-Italian hate speech laws, it's pretty obvious what's going on. It means they just don't want people to criticize the elites. They don't want people to be able to talk to the kings that are turning them into tax cattle cash slaves. That's what's going on. So it's like it's not a hateful observation. It's like they do the same thing with racism and everybody could see it now. But it's like, I don't care what ethnicity you are as a person and a soul, but I'm not going to not notice patterns in America. I notice crime patterns. I notice crime statistics. It's basic math and science, and we could have an argument about why. But at the end of the day, I notice patterns. It's just the reality of it. Like, it doesn't make me a bad person. It's the same thing with ownership. It's like, you think everyone doesn't know that, people own stuff, but you got to pass a speech law to say that it's hate speech to say that they own stuff. It's ridiculous. It's like saying it's anti-pharmatic to say that big pharma pays off politicians. They do. They literally do. Doesn't mean every pharmaceutical pill is bad. Doesn't mean every pharmaceutical company is terrible, but big pharma is one of the biggest lobbyists in Washington, and it's not anti-pharmatic to say that big pharma has power. So if a group of people owns a lot of things, and then there's hate speech laws in your country that says that you go to prison in some countries, you literally go to jail if you say that they're exaggerating, or you say that if you question an event. In America, it's not jail time yet, but it'll get your protest banged up. It'll get people to censor you. It'll get the Republican Party and the Democratic Party to move away from you. It'll get multiple media companies on the left and the right to drop you. It's like they're moving towards a totalitarian speech regulation like there are in a lot of countries. I believe in a lot of history that is really deep to me, but it's like, I don't believe in a speech law to stop somebody from questioning it. You could say that George Washington was amazing. You could say that George Washington was a piece of shit. I don't really give a shit, but this is where America doesn't work anymore, because there's certain people and certain groups and certain racial groups and certain activists in multiple ethnicities that think that they want double standards. They want special rules and special laws for them, but not for you. And it's why it's not the only reason, but it's like our society's failing because it doesn't work. You can't do that. Like, if your ethnicity is mysteriously committing more violent crimes, you can't say that it's hate speech to say that it's happening, because then it seems like you're gatekeeping it or you're not being honest about it. You can make an excuse for why it's happening or make your case for why it's okay, but you can't gaslight people into thinking it's not happening. But you could say it's for this reason and that, and we're not getting this and that. I don't care. That's fine. You can say whatever you want. Honestly, I don't give a shit. But like, you're going to say it's hate speech to say that people who own a lot of stuff, and Ben Shapiro's going to gatekeep it and then cry about hate speech when people know that he's lying. Have you ever heard, Ben, of self-awareness, self-accountability? No, that's not part of the game plan. It's just constant projection, constant double standards, constant hypocrisy. You make one country a huge part of your identity and your platform, and then you also, out of the other side of your mouth, say that it's hate speech to say that you're even doing it, and then you're going to cry when people realize that you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, but you're never going to self-reflect on what you're doing. You're always just going to... It's like it's not a way to be popular or have people like it. Like, people don't like that. And now, it used to be like, obviously the left has had criticisms of this or that, but I didn't really even think about Israel-Palestine that much, to be quite honest. I had no idea that most left-wingers were on the side of Palestine. I'm just going to be honest. It wasn't a thing that I really thought much about. Like, I knew some did, but like, now that this is all happening, yeah, good luck saying the word anti-Semitism to a liberal. 90-something% of them, they don't care. If you call someone anti-Semitic, liberals will probably look it up and be like, oh, they're probably telling the truth, or, oh, they're probably protesting Israel. And a lot of those kids are Jewish. So it's like, you can't gaslight the Jewish Palestinian protesters. Like, they're literally Jewish, and you're calling them anti-Semitic, suggesting that they hate themselves because they're not cool with the foreign policy going on in that country. So it's like, and then on the right, this is the whole Tucker, Ben and Jeremy and all that. It's like, this is the real culture battle. It's people who know what I'm saying versus the other side of it that just want to call everything anti-Semitic. And someone like a Seth Dillon, I hope he comes on my show. I would have a blast. Seth Dillon, the CEO of Babylon Bee, he started kind of going along with the Ben Shapiro, oh, you're just asking questions, right? I'll just line it up to show how ridiculous it is and why this guy's not going to beat me in a conversation or debate about this, because I'm being honest and he's being sneaky. It's Seth Dillon, for lack of a better word. Okay, so Ben Shapiro makes a video and says, people who are just asking questions aren't just asking questions. And it's, they know what they're saying. They just don't want to say it. So they're just asking questions, right? Now starting to demonize just asking questions. Okay, I don't agree, but whatever. Coming from a guy who didn't seem to ask enough questions about the COVID-19 pandemic and said he got lied to by the government and Pfizer, the irony is not lost on me of how ridiculous it is for a guy who should have been asking questions to gaslight people into thinking they shouldn't be asking questions. But we move on. And then Jeremy Boring came out and he named 3 specific things that he thinks are, you hate America or you can't love this country if you question. He included the moon landing, which is ridiculous, whether you think it's real or fake, to suggest someone can't love the country if you question the moon landing, trying to play to like the boomer brain of like, America, that's when we were great when we landed on the moon. If you don't believe that, you don't like us. It's like, okay, 9/11 and George Bush, a common conspiracy theory, whether people like it or not. And then what was the other one? That it was bad to drop nuclear bombs on innocent civilians during Japan. Also a highly contested topic. So, right, I'm just walking you through. So then Jeremy says that and specifically says 3 questions. And then Seth Dillon, the Babylon Bee CEO, comes out and he starts agreeing with Jeremy in the comment section, being like, yeah, just asking questions. Yeah, right. Okay, so then everyone goes, you're demonizing questions, just asking questions. I'm getting to a point. There's a reason I'm saying all this, because it's hilarious. And Seth Dillon, he responds to me and he goes, I'm not saying you can't ask questions. I didn't say you can't question things. So it's like he's saying that you shouldn't ask questions while he's being extremely vague, while he's lying like he is just completely oblivious of why he's getting all this backlash. Like, he agreed with specific questions that Jeremy asked, and now he's acting like he never said that when he literally commented on the post. So it's like he's trying to vaguely pretend like I didn't say that while acting shocked that anyone would disagree with him, because he's like, I didn't say anything. All I said was just questions, but I didn't specify what questions. And he's doing the same thing that he's complaining about, like saying that people just asking questions are too afraid to say what they really feel, while he's afraid to say what he really thinks by hiding behind, I'm just not talking about all questions, but what questions? What are you talking about, Seth Dillon? Nobody knows because you're not being clear. You comment in a comment section of specific questions and you're agreeing with people asking specific questions. People call you out and now you don't want to stand behind what you think because you don't really think it. If you don't think anything, then stop talking about it. What are you saying? I'm not saying that. Then what are you saying? You're not saying anything. You're doing the same thing that you're complaining about. This is what these people do because they're not winning the argument. And that's on X where they're getting destroyed. So now that they've come for TikTok, you better believe that X is the next target if it hasn't been already, because they're losing the information battle on it. And if you're going to give $30 billion to a foreign country and then use the police to shut down protests of that country, it's not that hard to figure out what's going on. It's like America is just tax cattle country where we fund Ukraine, we fund Israel. And the second we try to have an opinion about funding Ukraine or funding Israel, they crack down on us. And what's going on now in the left and the right is people are starting to realize, and it's funny because as terrible as the left is, as dumb as they are in a lot of topics, as clueless as they are, as they're so far from my allies in any way, shape, or form because I don't trust them. It's funny that they've come to the conclusion that neither party matters and no politician's going to come save them. And, they figured that out. The left, they're like, Biden sucks. Trump sucks. RFK sucks. I have no dog in this race. And they're right. RFK's not going to fix this problem. He's just the same on this exact problem. He's not doing anything. He's not going to win. But he's just another like stalling and taking your time. But he's good on pharmaceuticals, but he's not a real candidate. And even if he was, and even if he won, he'll be exactly the same as Mike Johnson on this topic. Isn't that interesting? And Donald Trump and Biden. So the left has figured this out. A lot of the right has figured this out, but a lot of the right still believes that Donald Trump is going to save them. And there's going to be a moment when everybody realizes that Donald Trump is no different from Mike Johnson and no different from Lindsey Graham, and it's all an act, and he's exactly the same. And I believe that's what all these laws are for, the speech laws, the protest laws, because right now, the truth is the election doesn't really matter that much. And, the left, I think, has figured that out. I'm not justifying what they're doing. They've just figured it out. They don't want to wait till November because they don't like Biden or Trump. So they're like, I'm throwing a fit now. I'm being like a little baby now. I don't like that people are dying overseas now. And we're going to sit in this field and we're going to, not move, and we're not going to class, and we're protesting this and that. And sometimes their protests annoy the shit out of me when they block bridges. It's ridiculous. I'm not justifying. I'm just saying they figured that out. I think they're normalizing bringing in police to protest because there's going to be a time that Trump supporters protest, because whether Trump wins or lose, if he loses, you already know they're going to set you up again. It's going to be January 6th part 2, and everyone's going to fall for it because they follow a bunch of ops and plants and Republican media that tell them what to think and do. But in general, even if Trump wins, there's going to be a moment where you're going to want to peacefully protest to some large extent, because you're going to realize that nothing really changes. The money's going to keep flowing. Trump's not going to do shit. And Congress is not on your side even if you win. We won the House. It's not on our side. So then you're going to want to protest. And they're normalizing police brutality at protests. And I'm not saying like police brutality, like the police stop the criminal. I'm talking about U.S. police, U.S. law enforcement, and U.S. military/National Guard to come in and shut down your protests. And guess what? This is the QAnon counterintelligence Bolshevik psyop that they rehashed from New Lies for the Old by Golitskin, that he wrote about when the Bolsheviks were doing what they were doing 100 years ago. What has QAnon told people the entire time? So I've had debates with people in 2018 where they said, we're just waiting for martial law. Why, stupid? Martial law, every conspiracy theorist knows that martial law means the government has too much power. No idiot on planet Earth would think that martial law is good for America. Like, oh, the military's marching in to turn against you. Yay, hooray. But that's what QAnon told a bunch of people. And a bunch of these ops and plants have brainwashed people into thinking that martial law is good. So it's the same thing as the lockdown. When the lockdown happened, I haven't talked about it in a while, but people who watch my show enough know, before the media started annoying me because I was right, it was Q-tards and QAnon people that were like, oh, you're working with the enemy. Why? Because you're saying the lockdown's bad. It is bad. No, Donald Trump has a plan. They think lockdowns are good, but then they never tell the truth that they thought that. They all did. They're going to think the martial law is good. And when, they don't believe their own eyes, so they can't have an intelligent analysis on what's going on college campus, they'll be like, Donald Trump's going to blah, blah, blah. It's like the opposition's controlled. So it's like, if that happens during Trump, whenever Trump supporters realize that nobody's going to come save them and they want to peacefully protest or stand somewhere or, basically non-comply in order to get results, they're going to do the same thing to you. And especially if it's on a similar topic, because they pass hate speech laws and anti-protest laws for that topic. And you could stretch that topic and read the hate speech laws. It could be very broad. I've said this a few times, but I want to repeat it. Donald Trump has done more for Israel than almost any president's ever done. He's so pro-Israel, it's ridiculous. He thinks Israel should literally own Congress. That's what he said. He said they used to and they should now. It's like, what? He's so pro-Israel, it's ridiculous. But he got called anti-Semitic for that. But he still gets called anti-Semitic. You know why? Because the anti-Semitism hate speech laws that he's passing are so broad. He is anti-Semitic according to the law. Ted Cruz is one of the biggest sellout scammers ever, but he's a little better than most, I guess. He's better than Lindsey Graham, sort of, but he's a sellout. He does whatever for Israel. He's so pro-Israel, but he's been called anti-Semitic. Do you know why? Because he said Mike Bloomberg owned media. He meant Bloomberg owns Bloomberg News. I don't think Ted Cruz thinks Bloomberg owns the whole media, because Mike Bloomberg doesn't own the whole media. He owns Bloomberg. Everybody knows that. Nobody's accusing him of owning all of the media, but because Ted Cruz worded it wrong or worded it vaguely, Ted Cruz got accused of anti-Semitism. Tom Cotton, I'm convinced he would do literally anything for Israel. He's been called anti-Semitic too because he talks about George Soros and George Soros DAs and all the things that everybody talks about. And since George Soros happens to be that ethnicity, he gets liability protection from those anti-Semitism hate speech laws. And even that could be considered anti-Semitic. And people will be like, but Anomaly, talking about George Soros isn't anti-Semitic. He's just an individual. I'm not saying you're saying all those things, but I'm saying I read the hate speech laws. It's not what you think it says because Glenn Beck said that, or Ben Shapiro told me that, or I watched Dan Bongino and he said this. It's what it actually says. Go read the laws for yourself. Stop listening to these people blindly thinking that it just says if the protest goes too far, they're going to stop Hamas supporters. That's not what the speech law says. Google State Department defining anti-Semitism. Read them for yourself. Ignorance is a choice. And then ask yourself, if you've ever said anything that violates one of those laws. You probably have, because they're so damn broad. You can't say George Soros is funding stuff. You can't say Bloomberg owns a media company, because that violates the second hate speech law that Trump, DeSantis, Youngkin, all of them are passing into legislation. And Governor Abbott, in his little wheelchair, whatever he's doing, he's rolling around going nuts over this stuff. Bring in the police. He's a tyrant. Too bad he can't be a tyrant for the border. Imagine if he rolled over there and closed the border himself or built a wall. He can't do that. He can't stop 7 million people from coming across the borders, but he sure can get the police to shut down protesters. And I'm just going to say this, you're a damn fool if you think this isn't going to be used against you. It's so obvious now. It's so incredibly obvious. It's ridiculous. And God knows what they're going to do with all the stuff they've just passed, but it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's strength in numbers. And in general, when millions of people are uncontrollable and just telling the truth, that's the revolution. Not going to an event and getting set up by the feds, not listening to this or that. I'm preaching peaceful, simple. I'm not even telling you have to go stand with a picket fence and a pharmaceutical thing on your face. I mean, knock yourself out if that's what you want to do, but I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is peaceful non-compliance. Just knowing this stuff alone would shift the entire paradigm of politics tomorrow. It would be like with Trump and all the stuff he was talking about the vaccine. If every Trump supporter just stood there and said, no, I don't believe it. And every Republican journalist said, nah, that's a terrible answer. I'm going to push back on it. There would be change. But nobody does that, so it just keeps continuing. That's what I think. Pretty straightforward. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I got a couple minutes, but I'm going to keep this under an hour because it makes sense. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. Someone said, I'm Donald Trump. Shut up, Anomaly. Donald Trump is in YouTube as Dylan the guy. Yeah, that's not believable, but someone said, this is why Chomsky and Finkelstein are against BDS. They know that this will hurt Israel. Well, to Noam Chomsky's credit, I mean, I can't speak for all of his policies because honestly, I disagree with Noam Chomsky a lot. But go read Noam Chomsky's, that's what made him great. That's why I actually do respect Noam Chomsky, although he is a little too far left than me. He's an American citizen, and in my opinion, a little bit too far left, but an American Jewish patriot, because he always knew if you use these speech rules and there were Jewish students who came up and said, Noam, they're criticizing World War II. How could you be cool with that? And he said, I'm not cool with that. He said, I'm cool with people's right to say that, because if we take away their right to say that, then they're going to do it to us. That's what tyrants do. He said, that's what Stalin did. That's what Hitler did. That's what Mao did. You can't take away someone's right to question an event or say this. Noam Chomsky is a legend for that. I actually used to really like Noam Chomsky. I'm not like a huge fan or anything, and he's been wrong about certain topics and a little hypocritical in his elder years, but he's like 10,000 years old. It's like, at this point, who cares? But he always, that's why he's on that side. Go read his quotes on speech. I'll read one now real quick because it's one of my favorite quotes. Let me see. Noam Chomsky, free speech quote. He's got some of the best. He said, if you're in favor of freedom of speech, that means you're in favor of freedom of speech precisely for views you despise. I mean, if we don't believe in free expression for people we despise, then we don't believe in it at all. That's what Noam Chomsky said. He's 100% right. And here's the thing. I can't tell you who Finkelstein is or what Chomsky thinks about Israel or not. I can't tell if they like it, or it seems like Finkelstein is not a fan. Like, he doesn't seem like he cares that much about Israel, to be fair. I don't think he's like super pro-Israel or anything. But at the same time, I don't know what his real thoughts are. Either one, he's just calling it like he sees it. Or, yeah, of course, like people are saying, these type of actions are not only are they not good for America, they're not good for Israel. And this has been said for 30, 40 years but this is what I want to point out too, is like, this is the hypocrisy of the Ben Shapiros of the world. Let's just take Norman Finkelstein for an example, right? Norman Finkelstein, Jewish American, not loyal to Israel. He's just not, it's obvious to people that like him, to people that hate him. He's not loyal to Israel. I'm telling you that not every Jewish person is loyal to Israel, because it's not true. Jewish people are not a monolith. There's different opinions. But the same people, like Ben Shapiro will say, you can't say, this is one of the hate speech laws that Ben Shapiro has specifically tweeted on his Twitter account. He's tweeted nearly word for word this exact speech law that's being passed through law. It says, a Jewish American, whether ethnic or religious, is loyal to America, not Israel. Any supposition that a Jewish American is loyal to Israel is anti-Semitism, right? Ben has tweeted nearly that exact phrase. So if you say any Jewish American is loyal to is loyal to Israel, that's anti-Semitism. But then someone like Finkelstein is a Jewish American who's not loyal to Israel, and Ben hates that guy. It's like, you can't say that a single Jewish person's loyal to Israel, but then when you find thousands upon tens of thousands of Jewish people who aren't loyal to Israel, Ben Shapiro hates their guts. So it's like he's yelling at both sides of the argument. Don't say that. I'm not saying that. I've never said that, because it's not true. It's not true that every Jewish person in America cares about Israel. It's not. People could think it is. Certain right-wingers think it's true. It's not true. But then Ben has a problem with those people. It's like, how are you going to say that it's anti-Semitism to say that anyone likes Israel, and then you get mad when they don't? It's almost like he wants everyone to be loyal to Israel, but then you can't say that it's happening. It's like so exhaustingly, ridiculously fake. It's insane. And there's a lot of people. I mean, like Glenn Greenwald, I'm not sure. I think he's Jewish. It's like, he's one of my favorite reporters ever. I think someone wrote on my Twitter, Glenn Greenwald is a Hall of Fame reporter. Absolutely. Glenn Greenwald is one of the best reporters in modern history. With the Snowden stuff, he continues to just be on the ball about everything. There's a lot of things I disagree with Glenn Greenwald on when it comes to politics in the country. But if every left winger were like Glenn Greenwald, and, I guess we're at least as honest as him about politics, it would be a lot easier to fix these stuff. Someone said he's gay. Yeah, I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying, as far as his reporting, I'm not asking you to go sleep with him if that's what you were thinking. But in general, it's like he's intellectually honest, and I see it. So in general, it's so obvious once you take away your bias and certain things you've heard and just analyze it. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm definitely going to be paying attention to these universities, but I've seen the writing on the wall for a while. I think I'll just end on this note, because I want us to be under an hour. I think that this is why self-accountability is so important for everyone, including me, but including groups and politicians. You can't pass speech laws for a foreign country and expect people to like it in America. It's causing more people to be annoyed. They don't seem to care. You can't just constantly say that people can't say stuff while you're doing stuff. That's crazy. That it's not working. It's not working in America. It's not working for our allies. It's not going to work. It's like if they say Ukraine's winning the war, are they? I don't think they are. Maybe they are, but in 10 years, we'll figure it out. Did Ukraine really win? If they didn't, people saying that it was happening and calling you pro-Putin for saying it wasn't happening, it doesn't matter anymore. You understand? It's like the truth will, people figure it out eventually. You can't do all these things, and everything they're doing is backfiring. But this is the point that I want people to come to, not in a hopeless way, but just in an honest way. Politicians are not coming to save us. Definitely not these ones. Trump's not going to fix it. Biden's certainly not going to fix it. And the quicker people realize that, the quicker we can actually find solutions rather than just running back and forth like a ping pong ball. It's not scary to understand this. It's scary to believe a lie and believe in a politician. Have faith in God. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in your countrymen. Don't have faith in a leader who's clearly doing stuff and then ignore it. It's not going to work. I see people waking up, and I think that crazy events make people wake up, unfortunately, but it's like all this stuff every day, everything that these people say on Twitter, the Jeremy Borings of the world, it's just making more and more and more people figure it out. So I don't know what else to really say, but I'll be back tomorrow. I did 2 streams today, kept them both under an hour. That's an accomplishment in itself. I'll be back. God bless you. Let me know what you think. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the